And for our friends to come in slowly. So we can start by doing a short guided sitting before more people come. Breathing in, I am aware that there is an in-breath. Breathing out, I am aware that there is an out-breath. Aware of in-breath, aware of out-breath. Breathing in, I follow my in-breath from the beginning to the end. Breathing out, I follow my out-breath from beginning to the end, following the whole length of the in-breath, following the whole length of the out-breath. Breathing in, I am dwelling in the present moment. Breathing out, I know this is a happy moment. Present moment, happy moment. So, dear respected teacher, dear Sangha, I would like to invite the monastic brothers and sisters up for chanting to begin the Dharma talk. Con kính bạch sư ông cũng thưa quý thầy quý sư cô, con xin mời quý thầy quý sư cô lên tụng kinh trước pháp thoại. Cảm ơn đại chúng.
The Sangha is invited to come back to our breathing so that the collective energy of mindfulness will bring us together as an organism, going as a river with no more separation. Let the whole Sangha breathe as one body, chant as one body, listen as one body, transcending the boundaries of a delusive self, liberating us from the superiority complex, the inferiority complex, and the equality complex.
May the day be well and the night be well. May the midday hour bring happiness too. In every minute and every second, may the day and night
So dear respected teacher, dear Sangha, so for those who just came, just a reminder to our friends to, before the talk, please turn off your cell phones and avoid taking flash photography. Thank you. So just remember to turn off your cell phones so it doesn't disturb the talk. Thank you.
also, one of my sisters, Sister Bamboo, she decided to buy seeds for the birds. Apparently, these seeds can attract the yellow birds. They're small like this, and they have a very beautiful yellow color. It took a few weeks for the birds to figure out those were seeds for them. And after they figured that out, 1 or 2 weeks later, the squirrels also figured out that they're seeds for them. So in the beginning, my sister, she just used a pole, a stick, and then she hang it in the mid-air like that, because we have a balcony in front of the nunnery. So it was just about 5 feet tall off the balcony. But when the squirrels figured that out, they were very interested. And they weren't happy to just eat some of the seeds that fell off, but they actually jumped all the way up and bit the sack, and the sack burst open and all the seeds fell on the ground. And so they ate the seeds. And so my sister was very persistent. She sewed up the sack, she put more seeds, but she asked me, what can we do now, because the squirrels can climb all the way up there. And so I thought about it, and I said, if you find a long metal rod, then the squirrels cannot cling on to the rod, right? And so then it may work. So she found the stick exercise, a long tube, plastic, one about 5 feet long, and she put that up there, and then she even put Vaseline. It's an expensive hobby. Vaseline along the plastic tube. And you know what? It's the funniest thing to sit in the room or to sit on the porch and watching the squirrels doing acrobatics. They climb up and they're like, falling off like this. And one squirrel would try to jump up really high, real fast, and hang on, and then it would just like fall down like this. So we'll be laughing so hard, but eventually the squirrels still could get there. So Sister Bamboo was very determined. She got yet another stick to put in that plastic tube. She put another stick about another 5 feet long. And then she stabilized it with a rock. So it's within, and so now you have a 10-foot tall rod up there. If you walk by the nunnery, you see it too. And the squirrels still try to get up there. But even if it passed the plastic tube, when it tries to get to the wooden stick, because the wooden stick is stuck in the tube and it's lodged, but it's not very stable. So it's, it sways like this. The squirrel gets really scared. Then it falls down. And so one day, another sister and I, we were sitting on the front porch watching these squirrels. There were 2 of them. And one was okay to eat the seeds, but the other one, as it was eating, it keeps looking up like this. And then it eats some more seeds, and it's like, and so my sister said to the squirrel, they're just the same seeds. And I said, oh no, if the seeds are this good on the ground, they must be 10 times as good up there. And the squirrel was contemplating on that sack so hard. Its back is back like this and the neck like this. And I talked for the squirrel, I said, I love you so much, seed. I want you so much. I'll break my neck for you. I'll break my back for you, literally. And my sister, she was saying, probably these squirrels are thinking, these nuns, they're evil. But as we were making poetry and joyful comments about the squirrels, I thought of myself, and maybe we can have just a short meditation. Just take a moment to visualize ourselves as a good old squirrel. This squirrel, so determined, so ambitious. And there's this sack hanging up there, high in the sky, 10 feet tall. What is that sack for us? What is it that we want so badly? That we would do everything, anything to get to that sack. That we think that we will bring us the deepest, greatest, final happiness, ultimate happiness. I just keep looking at that sack for a while. We enjoy one sound of the bell. What is that great sack for you, my dear? Would some of you raise your hands and share? What is it? Yes?
Having my husband be alive for as long as possible.
Having my husband be alive as long as possible, for as long as possible. Anybody else? Yeah? Two more. Dear brother. Anything in mind? Yes?
To achieve inner peace.
To achieve inner peace. Anything else? One more. Teenager. Yes? Going to medical school and be a successful doctor. Okay. Any teens? What's that great sack up there for you? You know that the term nirvana literally, it was a word even before the time of the Buddha, a word of the common people. So when we have a fire and then the coal is very hot, and when it's left overnight, then the ashes become very cool. And then in the morning, when you go there, you touch it, it will not burn you. And they refer to that as nirvana. It's a state of coolness that it doesn't burn you. Nirvana has also been translated as great joy, Dai Lạc, great joy. Like in the discourse on the 8 realizations of the great beings, Nirvana is translated as great joy. So I was thinking of the word great, like great joy. And then in Chinese character, it's very interesting. this is the character for great. When we think of something great, like great success, or great joy, or a great being, you think of that as an object outside of us that we pursue, even great health for somebody, something outside for us to pursue. There's the subject and there's an object. But the term great, interestingly enough, this character right here, Nyang, means the person. Yeah? And with this character across it, Nyak, and it makes it great, Dai. Okay? Great. So this, to me, it brings us back. It's not the object outside, but it's the person. Do you sense this? It's like a person walking on a rope. Yeah? And there's balance because there's this pole that you hold, this balance. This signifies stability, balance. It has a sense of equilibrium, equanimity. That's what makes it great. A great person is a person with equanimity, with stability and balance. A success that is great or not, it doesn't depend on that object outside of us, but it also depends on us, whether we have that balance and that equanimity or not. If we don't have, then it wouldn't be a great success. It wouldn't even be great joy. So it comes back to us, the mind and the object of mind. We pursue the object of mind, something outside of it, but it comes back to the mind itself. Because imagine if this also still this person, but it's like this, yeah? When the state of mind is not in balance, but it's too low, like depression, despair, you fall off very easily. Nothing means anything. When you're too high, yeah, like hypomania, excitement, falling in love, so high, you also fall off a great height. So what makes something great? What makes an experience great? What makes a goal great? It depends on us. It's our state of mind, if it's great or not, if there's that balance or not. So we'll talk about great joy. There's a distinction between joy and happiness in Buddhism. Joy still has the flavor of excitement. There's still these waves. Like you're anxious to see somebody after such a long time of separation, of being away. You're excited about it. So your heart is beating fast. Yeah? You're preparing things and you think about that. Your partner or your children, your parents, a friend, a loved one. There's that excitement. That's joy. But happiness is the next state. Happiness is when we're sitting next to each other. And after all the chattering, yeah, has subdued. And you are just greatly comfortable being in silence next to somebody. No words necessary, no movements necessary. Just simply be fully present, fully aware of each other. That's a deep happiness. One time, young college students asked us, a group of monastic brothers and sisters, are you happy? And I said to them, that, you know, our happiness is not the kind of state that you get after you eat chocolate. You eat chocolate and then you get a sugar high. And then you crash afterwards. But our happiness is like eating carrots, or eating broccoli. You know it's good for you while you're eating it. It feels peaceful, calm afterwards, and it nourishes your body for time to come. So that's happiness, something very calm, peaceful, reaching over, present, ever present for us, now and much later. And when our brothers and sisters have shared during the last 5 days, during our retreat, about the Four Noble Truths, we talk about there is suffering, there is also happiness. For suffering to exist, there's a path of suffering. We never think of that. We often think suffering is something imposed on us. And if you listen to it, always when we talk about suffering, we're always victims. Hardly ever I hear myself or I hear other people say, I am the perpetrators of the suffering. I bully somebody, I cheat somebody, I hurt somebody. We never talk like that, very seldomly, but always I am abused, I am lied to, I am hurt, I am this and that. But it's very humbling when we learn the Dharma and we recognize we're not just victims, we are also perpetrators. We also perpetuate suffering. Yes, maybe suffering takes place at one time in space and time. Like when we were children, for example, we suffer from poverty, from discrimination, from abuse, verbal, physical, or sexual. That happens, many conditions. The situation was like that. But now that we have grown up to be adults, and yet we continue to think in a victimized way. We continue to speak things that hurt ourselves, that put down ourselves and put down others. We continue to behave in such a way that bring more suffering to ourselves and more suffering to others. And sometimes I even tell people who come, to me for consultation. There was a very beautiful young woman who talked a lot about her suffering. And I listened for a long time. Then finally I said to her, my dear, you are addicted to your suffering. And she was shocked to hear that. How can you be addicted to suffering? But if we are honest to ourselves and we take a moment to look deeply into our thoughts, our speech, our bodily actions. These are called the 3 karmas, the 3 actions of mind, of speech, and of body. We will see how we feed the suffering. And that is why we say that suffering is a path. Okay? There's a path of suffering. There's also nutriments, like in the 5 mindfulness trainings. Nutriments of suffering. We feed it with our thoughts, with our speech, with our behaviors. We feed our suffering. We perpetuate it. We make sure that it's alive in our daily life. Yeah? It's also a practice. It's a rehearsal of suffering. We daydream about it. We yearn about something. We regret over something. It's a practice. Is it a choice? Who would choose to suffer? Maybe we don't choose it consciously, but maybe we choose it unconsciously because that's all we know. Physiologically, that's what we are most familiar with. the sadness, the despair, the anger, that the body is physiologically addicted to those hormones. The mind is addicted to that way of thinking. So there is a path of suffering. That is the second noble truth. But the Buddha also said, if the Buddha stopped right there, then you say there's nothing noble about suffering, right? But the Buddha didn't stop there. The Buddha said, because there is a path of suffering, there's also a path of joy and happiness. If I misspell words, please raise your hand and remind me, okay? I have Lyme disease and it affects my spelling. I'm much better, but I misspell words that are very simple. But there is also a path, because we know that suffering is not just innate and is imposed on us and we are forever victim of it. That's why it's noble. Okay? It's noble because we know that there's a path to it, that there's nutriment, there's a practice, there's a choice. And if we're aware of that, then we can choose it or not choose it. Suffering is noble because when we know this and we choose not to feed it, not to rehearse it, not to choose it in our daily life, then we choose the opposite. We choose joy, we choose happiness. And we have very specific practices that help us to do this. And it brings great joy, this equilibrium, this mind that is spacious and that is in balance. And the Buddha called that as the three powers. Tam Đức, three powers. When we practice, we gain three powers that brings us great joy. It's not the kind of power that President Obama has. Because that power, I don't think it brings him great joy and great stability. He ages very quickly. Yeah. The first power, so in the three powers, is the power of insight. Okay, the power of insight. The second power is the power, this we call Tam, this is Trí Đức, power of cutting off afflictions. This is Đoạn Đức. And the third power is the power of love. So in our spiritual practice, with mindfulness, we can gain these three great powers. The power of insight. There are many great insights, but one insight to me that holds, embraces all insights, that's the insight of interbeing that we might have heard before. And to demonstrate this, to make it simple, I have some seeds here. So this seed, it has a curvy line in the middle like this. And half of the bean is totally black. And half of the bean is totally white. And in the part that is all black, there's one dot that is white. And then on the part that is all white, There's one or two, a couple of dots that are black. And so we can call this interbeam. Okay? It's an interbeam. Because we see that in the black, there's the white. In the white, there's the black. In the flowers, there's sunshine. There's the earth. There's the water. There's the gardener. In me, there's my grandmother. When I see our Vietnamese aunties and uncles here, I think of my grandmother. Think of my grandmother. In me, there's my grandmother. You know, my grandmother never went to school, not even one day. And she learned to spell from her son who went to school. In first grade, she learned to spell. And so that's how she learned to read. And she actually knew this epic poem that had 2,000 lines plus. She memorized them. But you know, when I was growing up, when people came to ask my grandmother to sign something about the house, something logistic, my grandmother would hold a hand and her hand would shake like this, and then finally, with great effort, she put a cross, because my grandmother couldn't write. She never learned how to write. But in me, that's my grandmother. If I ever say, oh, I'm highly educated, you know, I went to college, I went to medical school, I have an MD, and this and that, you know, how could I even think of my grandmother? Then I am not whole. I am lost. So I see my grandmother in me. And you know, when we were growing up, because both of my parents passed away since I was very young, and my grandmother would have to go grocery shopping, would have to cook for us, and I learned to wash my clothes and my brother's clothes when I was very young, only 7. I already started to learn to help cooking and washing, walking my brothers to school. But whenever my grandmother had free time, just some free time, my grandmother would sit on the plank bed. Our bed doesn't have mattresses like here, so thick, you know, just a wooden bed, that's it. And then you put a pillow on, so we call it a plank bed. My grandmother would sit there and she would count the rosary. Or she would sit very quietly like that. And she was this. My grandmother was cultivating balance in her, stability in her, so that she could hold us. So that over the years when I came to the US and I went through great depression, I went through deep despair, the image of my grandmother who was sitting still on the plank bed would appear in my mind, would appear in my dreams. And just her image alone gave me hope, gave me enough peace to get out of bed, to continue, so that I could be here today with you. And that's what my grandmother was doing. Yeah. And so the insight of interbeing is to see all the elements that have come together to make us who we are today. Not to reject anything, not to condemn or to be proud of anything, but just to hold them with equanimity, with deep recognition, with balance, to hold them. That's the insight of interbeing. So, if a teenager just say, you know, I am who I am, can't wait to get away from my mother and my father, you just intervene. Okay? You just intervene. But if you see how deeply connected you are to your parents, that if you learn about them, if you are so blessed to still have a mother and a father alive outside of you, get to know them as much as you can. Make peace with them, reconcile with them, because that is learning to make peace with ourselves, learning about ourselves, so that we don't have to tumble and fumble so much through life, trying to figure out who we are, because we can see who we are in our parents, in the conditions that they have gone through, in the conditions that we have gone through. That is the power of insight that gives us deep joy, deep, great happiness. This insight has the power to remove the alienation that so many of us experience. Alienation, this schism in us that we feel, so cut off from our loved ones, from the world. So much individualism in our society. So much loneliness is because we don't have that insight of interbeing. So to come back to this truth and to make it a practice in our daily life. When we practice walking meditation, you walk slowly, one step with one breath, and you walk slowly. Or one breath, you take 2 steps or 3 steps, and you are completely present in that moment. You have great equanimity. And you see, at one moment you feel this deep tenderness for Mother Earth. If you notice, in our tradition we refer to the earth as Mother Earth, because she fulfills all the definition of a mother. She gives us this body. She gives us shelter and food and embrace our whole life. Before we are born, when we come back to the earth, when our body disintegrates, she's always there to hold us. So she's our great Mother Earth. A friend of mine said this about our teacher, and it moves me very deeply. She said, when Thầy walks, it is like he is an extension of Mother Earth. When we walk, because usually if our mind is elsewhere in the past or in the future or lost in our own thinking, the body sways, it jerks. It's very abrupt. Our footsteps are very noisy and harsh. There's no attention. There's no tenderness. There's no care. There's no connection. We're so disconnected. But when you walk and you are so careful, you are so attentive, the steps are like extension of Mother Earth. Just this sense of oneness, being in oneness with Mother Earth, being in oneness of body and mind. So it's a practice. It's a practice. It's a nutriment. This power, we need to practice it. We need to nourish it so that that insight becomes so real in our daily life, so that it gives us that power. And it gives us that great joy, great happiness. The second power that in our practice that can bring us is the power of cutting off affliction. Đoạn đức. Yesterday there was a question about secrets in the family, deep pain in the family. What do you do about it? I think most of us, we hold on to those things. Even if you are a child and you don't directly experience it, even just stories in the family that you overheard or somebody told you can become so alive in your mind, and it becomes so real, and it can haunt us. It doesn't allow us to fully blossom into our, our full potential. So when we practice mindfulness, the character for mindfulness it has two articles. This first article is kim, means now. This article is tam, means heart or mind. Mind, okay? So mindfulness, the literal translation of mindfulness means the mind in the now. It's the now mind. Can you meet yourself in the present moment? Not through the lens of trauma, the lens of regret, the lens of anxiety, of anticipation, just to learn to meet yourself in the present moment, where you're at in this moment. Can you meet somebody you love, you care for, in the present moment, and not through the lens of the past or the lens of the future? Can you just meet? Can we meet each other with the now mind in the present moment? And if you think about it, it's like when we look at the sunset, what we're looking at actually is the image after image. The sun has already set 8 minutes before that. Even the moon, what we're looking at is actually only an after image. It's the moon of 3 minutes before that. So when we're dwelling in the past, we usually only recall certain images, certain sounds, very cut off, very neatly packaged. Even when we are anticipating about the future with excitement or anxiety, it's also very neatly packaged. But if the mind can be in the now, right here in the now, nothing is so neatly packaged. Yes, even in the now, there can be something painful, something difficult. Somebody is saying something unkind, and your mind is registering that. But in the now, you also see the sunshine. You also see the beautiful nature. You also have your breath to come back to anchor, so that you have that balance, that equilibrium in body and mind. You see there's a difference? To meet something in the now, as it is in this moment, or to meet the past in the now and not just in the past. To meet the past in the now. A child was abused. a child was abandoned in the past. But if we meet that child in the present moment, we sit stably, solidly, we breathe, we relax the mind, we relax the body, then in that storm of the past, you are actually dwelling in the eye of the storm. You know, in the storm, when cars and everything are flying, there's always the eye of the storm, a diameter of about 20, 30 kilometers, you know, where there's sunshine, maybe mild drizzling, you know, some mild rain, but it's peaceful, safe, calm. In that zone, we call the eye of the storm. So when we are able to anchor in the present moment, in our breath, in our body, we calm down the thoughts, the emotions. We meet the past in the present moment. Then we are in the eye of the storm and we are not caught in the storm, swept away by the storm, and become a victim again and again, and feed that suffering and rehearse, practice that suffering, and unknowingly choose that suffering again and again. We would push away somebody who loves us, who wants to be there for us, and say, you don't understand. You don't understand. And we would be willing to turn our back on that person, to go in our room and cuddle with our suffering. Let our suffering, our despair, be our best friend, be our lover. So, there is a choice. There's a practice. So the steps, the mindful steps that we take can slow down the storms, can help us to anchor in the present moment, in the eye of the storm. The mindful breathing can also help us that. And when it's so strong, you can also lie down on your belly. You know, you lie down on the ground on your belly and breathe. And at first it may feel very effortful, and then slowly, slowly, you feel the inflating, deflating movement of the belly, and then slowly you feel like the earth is moving. There's this rhythm, there's this very soothing rhythm of the body and the earth becoming one. Just the movement of the belly, movement of the breath, and the mind is soothed, is calm and clear enough so that we have equanimity, we have equilibrium in order to look more deeply into what is. So during this retreat, I have the opportunity to practice with teenagers and a number of young adults. And we had a session where we sat with our inner child. We did beginning anew. We gave the presentation of beginning anew, just a brief presentation, and then we had the practice for the rest of the time. So you have flowers at the center, some candlelight, and then we sat in a circle, and then the young person would go up and bring the flower back to his or her seat, and then to speak to the inner child, to say, my dear inner child, I want to acknowledge you, to acknowledge that you suffer a great deal. I'm so sorry you had to go through that. I'm sorry that I abandoned you. I wanted to stifle you, didn't want to hear you. I'm sorry that I hurt you. So we learn to speak to our inner child, to befriend, to heal, to make amendments with our inner child, so that in the present moment we know that inner child is so alive in us. And at the same time, in the present moment, we are an adult, we're a teenager, and we're in a safe environment, and we have enough stability, power, and support of the community, of our loved ones, to hold this pain that has been there for so long. That's what it means. So when we practice, when we say to live in the now, it does not mean that we neglect, we deny that the past is not present or that the future is not there. No, we learn to take great care of it and to know it for what it is. Have you ever been depressed for so many years and yet you wouldn't be able to really talk about the roots of your suffering, to really know what your depression is about? Because we are so used to just getting lost completely in it that we don't have, we don't have a clear understanding of it at all. We just suffer blindly. So when the mind is in the now, it has the capacity to hold something with equanimity, with balance, with the insight of interbeing, and that is right there. To cut off afflictions is not to perpetuate it further. In this moment, we know how to take care of it. When we talk about habit energies, you have a stimulus that leads to a response, right? The first time it's just a faint trail, the neural pathway is established. And then that stimulus may take place a second time, the third time or something. Or maybe just us recalling that event mentally leads to that response of, tensing up the body. The heart beats fast, we go through a stress response. So before we know it, it becomes a freeway, not a trail anymore in us. And that is a habit. Yeah? We think of something that the person said 5 years ago, and we go through the same physiological stress response as if it's said right now. Then, not that person anymore, whether that person is actually existing in front of us or that person exists in us mentally. Now another person, let's say our child or our partner, a stimulus 2 or a stimulus 3, and yet it still resembles the experience that we had before, and it leads to the exact same response. You see? So the habit energy now is greatly engraved in us. The neural pathways in us are clearly marked. And only a sight, a sound, a smell, a taste, a touch, a thought about it, immediately neurotransmitters are released. Yeah? And we go through that physiological stress response. We go through the same way of thinking, oh, poor me, oh no, this and that. Same thoughts, same thinking patterns, same feelings, same perceptions, So physically and mentally, we go through the exact same response. That's habit energy. So in our practice of mindfulness, if we learn to do sitting meditation, it's not for a greater God or a greater Buddha. It's just simply to learn to be there for ourselves, to listen to our inner child, to listen to us in the here and the now, to learn to speak lovingly. My dear, I know you are there, and I'm here to take care of you. I know you're going through confusion right now. I'm here. I'm listening. Loving speech, deep listening. We're practicing that towards ourselves. And that helps us the capacity to be able to be in the now, to embrace what is, so that when a stimulus, 1 or 2 or 3 arises, we don't have to go through the same response, but maybe it's the very same stimulus. But because we have trained ourselves, to take a moment to just stop. When we hear the phone rings, we just put the things down, we put the words down, we put the thoughts down, and just simply breathe. So when something is said or something is done, instead of reacting by shouting or walking away or curling up, inwardly withdrawing, then we just take a breath. Say, okay, okay, it's okay. And that is an R2. Okay, a response, a different response. And this is a mindful response. This is a peace response. And it is a practice. And it is truly a choice. Teenagers, usually we think, if I get some money, if I make money, I can go buy all different kinds of jeans, different brand names, or you can buy a toothbrush, with different names, brands, and things like that. But there's no choice in there. No choice. They already have your mind figured out. You either get product A or you get product B or product Z, but you're gonna get one. That's not a choice. But a choice is truly a choice when we know something is painful, discomforting, arises, and we can just simply sit still and breathe with it. We can actually, in that moment, instead of tensing up all the muscles in the body, we can actually relax it or lie down and relax it and say, I'm here, it's okay. That we know how to come back to the eye of the storm and take care of it right there. That is the power of cutting off afflictions. We are not rehearsing it further. You see, even if you still do the same thing, but you just give it a mindful in-breath, a mindful out-breath, you have lengthened the reaction time. Instead of 1 second, it can become 2 seconds or 1.3 seconds. And if you can lengthen this or put a break in that, you can lengthen it more and more as you practice in your daily life. To stop with the bell, to stop with the phone, to let go of what's arising and just come back to the breath. Let us practice this letting go of what's arising and coming back to the breath, okay? Just simply anchor in the in-breath, know that is an in-breath. An out-breath, know that is an out-breath. And then to follow that in-breath from the beginning to the end, to follow that out-breath from the beginning to the end. It's 11:06. Okay. When we think of power, we often think of doing a lot of things. But actually in our practice, we learn to slow down everything. Learn to be still. And that is a great power, to be able to be still. To still the mind. To calm it down. It's a great power, because then from that we can change the way we think, the way we react. The past is still the past, but the way we look at the past will greatly determine how it affects our present and our future. The power of love. Usually in our retreats, with our teacher or with our monastic brothers and sisters, the question, how can I bring this practice home? It's so great here, it's so peaceful here. I experience, great joy, great happiness, deep transformation, but how am I gonna bring it home? And I recognize that it's very difficult. One of the main reasons why I became a nun was because I knew it would be very difficult to practice. As a lay person, as a physician, it would be very difficult to practice because of this habit energy is so deeply ingrained in us that when we go back to the old environment, it's like Pavlov's experiment, stimulus, response. And to break that cycle is so difficult. But now, as I have been a nun for a few years now, I don't think that all of us have become monks and nuns in order to practice. But we do need this power of insight. And we need this power of love to help us to be persistent, to be determined, to practice. Yeah. My brother has told me a few times, he said, insanity is doing the same thing and expecting a different result. And my brother does exactly the same things year after year. And somehow he expects a different result. So if we know that we have lived our life for these many years and certain things we do don't work, we have to have that insight. And to say, some people say, it's great, I want to be here, but I think it's so selfish. I'm just taking care of myself. What about the world? The world is suffering of great injustice out there, of abuse, of harm, this and that. So that's because we don't have the power of insight, of interbeing. We still see that we are separate from the world. Just in this place, just in this one person, ask about injustice, ask about abuse, ask about suffering. It exists in all of us, wherever we go. So to take care of oneself is to take care of the community, is to take care of the world. We have to have this. This is in that, and that is in this. And the power of the insight of interbeing says, this is because that is. This is not because that is not. The world is full of suffering because each one of us doesn't know how to take care of our mind. We perpetuate suffering in our own way, day after day, moment after moment, each one of us. So how can we expect the world to be full of joy? And the way we view the world also affects, how the world is actually, how the world actually is. So to be able to have this insight of interbeing will help us to invest more. Do you know that there are teenagers in this group who have been here for a whole month? And one teenager, actually, he said that I decided to come here because I thought it's the best way to take care of myself and my mother and my father. Instead of being home, and play video games the whole summer and hurting myself, I'm here to take care of myself and my parents and my brother. And there are at least 4 teenagers who have been here for at least 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks plus. They have that insight of interbeing. We also have to have a power of love to invest in our daily practice, even if you learn to sit just 15 minutes before you go to work. 15 minutes before you fall asleep, is to have great love for ourselves. Like when I practice, I think of my mother. My mother never had a chance to really enjoy her life. She passed away when she was only 36 years old, much younger than me now. She always had to work to take care of her family. So now when I can walk leisurely, mindfully, I think of my mother. I say, Mother, I walk for you. I take care of you. When I learn to take care of my body, I know that my mother's body is in my body. You may think you never met my mother, but you are looking at my mother right now. I look very much like her. So I take care of her by taking care of myself, by making peace with her unskillfulness right inside of me. So it takes great love and great insight in order to invest in our daily practice and not saying, okay, one day when I retire, when I have more time, I'll practice. Or later, now it's work, I gotta do work. Like that. Because every moment when we're stressing out over something, do you know that you're putting great stress on your body? That your body is weakening every single moment. That there's a dose of adrenaline, secreted into the bloodstream. Your heart beats faster, your respiratory rate increases, your body tenses up. That is building up to physical illness, to mental illness, right here and right now, when we are not aware. So it takes a lot of love to say, I don't want to do that. I want to stop that. I want to change that. I want to choose joy and happiness. I don't want to choose. I don't want to feed suffering. And then, you apply what you learn here, very small things. We do everything. We walk like everybody. We also sit. We also eat. We also wash. We also do service. We do everything. The only difference is that we take a little more time. And we do one thing at a time. And we always train ourselves to come back to the breath. Actually, David, are you still here, my dear? David. Yeah. I met David a few years ago. And last night he and his wife shared with the Sangha 2 very beautiful songs. But a few years ago, when I first met him, he shared a beautiful song, and he was on stage. He walked on stage. He walked very hurriedly on stage. And then they sang together beautifully, and then he walked hurriedly off the stage. And afterwards, I said hello to him, and I just said to him, you are a great musician. Could you invest in yourself a little more time? Just how you walk on stage, how you walk off stage. It can bring great peace to yourself already in your body and mind, and your music would reflect that even further. And many years later, last night, David still said to me, do you remember that moment, sister, when you said that? And I've continued to practice that over the years in many situations. I continue to give myself a little more time, to take time to do this, to do that. And so that's what it takes, great love and great insight, to come back to this balance in us and to know that if by chance a great illness comes, a diagnosis of cancer or some tragedy, or even in the midst of the day we are in an accident and we die, we can still say, I have lived my best. I have cultivated deep joy. I have chosen the path of joy, of love, instead of getting lost, drowned in suffering. Then it's all okay, whatever happens to us. And it's really a reason why I have chosen to be a nun, and that I continue to choose to be a nun every day. To just face what is, to be at peace with what is, and whatever comes, I can accept it. I can face it. So dear one, let us come back to our very beautiful sitting posture. Let us get in touch with our in-breath and enjoy that in-breath. Get in touch with the out-breath and enjoy that out-breath. Relax our whole body. Relax the thoughts and the feelings with a smile, with the out-breath. And to touch that moment of equilibrium, of balance, of stability, and to know that it is always there, that it is our choice to touch it, to cultivate it. Thank you, my dear, for being here. We have some announcements.